Dwayne Johnson, 53, wasn't the kind of CEO who liked making grand entrances. He preferred to observe in silence, to let the world speak before he said a word. That's why no one noticed when he checked into the luxury hotel that his company had just acquired. Disguised in a simple hoodie, jeans, and a baseball cap, he was just another guest. But this wasn't just a business audit. It was something deeper, something personal. Years of boardroom isolation had dulled his connection to the people his policies impacted. He didn't want reports. He wanted truth. That morning, as he stepped into the marble-tiled hallway, coffee in hand, he heard something unusual. Silence. Not the awkward kind, but the kind that carried a hidden message. He turned and saw her, Emma, the young hotel maid, moving with careful precision as she cleaned the hallway. She didn't greet him with words. Instead, she signed something. At first, he didn't understand, but her eyes, there was something honest in them, something that pulled at a part of him he thought he'd lost. Curiosity stirred. She nodded politely, smiled, and returned to folding towels. He stood there, longer than he meant to, realizing he had come looking for data, but maybe, just maybe, he'd find something real. The next morning, something changed. Dwayne stood by the balcony window, lost in thought as the sunlight filtered through the glass. He wasn't expecting anyone. Then a soft knock, a tap, really. He turned. There she was again. Emma. She stood just inside the suite, backlit by the hallway glow, not saying a word. Her hands moved deliberately in the still air. "Good morning. You are not alone." Her signing was gentle, clear. He didn't know the full meaning, but somehow he felt it. Something deep in his chest stirred, like the silence between two people who don't speak the same language, yet understand everything. His expressions softened. No one had ever greeted him like that. Not in years, not without expectation, not without agenda, just kindness, respect, recognition. Emma held his gaze, eyes steady but calm, then nodded and stepped back, disappearing, down the hall with her cleaning cart. Dwayne remained frozen by the glass, the warmth of the moment still clinging to the air. That brief exchange, silent yet powerful, lingered in his thoughts like an echo, an unspoken reminder that connection doesn't need sound to be heard. Later that week, something unexpected happened. Emma, in her usual maid uniform, was quietly restocking towels from the service cart when two security officers approached her. She froze, heart racing, her mind flashing with worst-case scenarios. Had she done something wrong? Was someone complaining? But instead of reprimands, they simply said, "Come with us. Mr. Whitmore wants to see you." Confused and nervous, Emma followed them through a maze of elevators and executive hallways she'd only ever glimpsed in passing. They led her to the 47th floor, a place reserved for the elite. The air felt heavier up there, more expensive. When the door to the office opened, she stepped inside slowly. There he was, Dwayne Johnson, seated behind a sleek glass desk with floor-to-ceiling, windows framing the city skyline behind him. He looked different in this setting, composed, powerful but not intimidating, warm even. Emma stood frozen, unsure what to say, unsure why she was there. Then he smiled. "Emma, right?" he asked gently. Her lips parted slightly in shock, nodding slowly. The silence stretched between them, rich with tension, disbelief radiating from her face. She had never imagined a CEO would know her name, let alone call her up for anything but trouble. But the look in his eyes wasn't judgment. It was curiosity, gratitude, even a touch of awe. It wasn't just a meeting. It was the beginning of a shift neither of them could yet fully comprehend. Emma stood at the edge of the office, her fingers tightening around the notepad she instinctively brought with her. The CEO, Dwayne Johnson, leaned forward, elbows on the desk, his expression one of sincere interest. "I saw what you signed that morning," he began, his voice calm, respectful. "You said, 'You're not alone.'" No one's ever said that to me before. Not like that. Emma's eyes widened, unsure how to respond, but she didn't need to. Her hands moved hesitantly at first, then with confidence, signing her thoughts, her thank you, her apology if she'd overstepped. Dwayne nodded slowly, understanding her intent. I grew up around someone who used ASL, he said. Your signing, it hit something real. I haven't forgotten it. Then he motioned to the chair across from him. Please, sit. She did, still silent, still unsure, but his tone never shifted from kind to corporate. He asked about her family, her background, how long she'd worked at the hotel. She told him, through signs and written notes, about her younger brother, Marcus, born deaf, and how every day was a struggle to find tools that made his world feel accessible. She never expected this man, this towering figure of power, to listen so intently. But he did. He listened, nodded, leaned in, and finally said, I've been looking for someone with your insight. I think you have something we need. The moment hung in the air like a held breath. Emma blinked, then signed with trembling hands. What do you mean? Dwayne smiled. TechBridge is building something that could help people like a brother, but we need a voice like yours, someone who lives it. Would you consider joining us? The silence that followed was thick with disbelief. For the first time, Emma didn't feel invisible. She felt seen, and everything began to change. In that moment, Emma stared at the sleek business card in her hand as if it weighed 100 pounds. The name Dwayne Johnson, CEO, TechBridge AI, gleamed in bold letters. She stood in the dim service corridor behind the hotel's pristine front, her maid uniform a sharp contrast against the sterile walls and the echo of rolling laundry carts. Her other hand clutched a folded note, half a resignation letter scribbled the night before in a rush of fear and hope. Behind her, the distant sound of heels echoed, fading quickly. Sarah Chen, another maid, barely glanced at Emma as she passed, unaware that the young woman standing still was on the verge of a life-altering decision. Emma's eyes lingered on the card, her thumb tracing its edge again and again. Her heart pounded with conflict. Who did she think she was? She'd grown up cleaning after people, not standing in boardrooms. Could she really trade the known struggle of her daily grind for the terrifying unknown of opportunity? Could she leave Marcus each day to work on something bigger, something uncertain? What if she failed? The cards seemed to blur in her hand. She looked up, catching her own reflection in the narrow glass window across the hall. Tired eyes, familiar uniform, but something else too, determination. Her breath trembled, but she held the card tighter. The moment was quiet, almost sacred. No applause, no witnesses, just a girl, a hallway, and a decision that would split her life into before and after. She wasn't sure what came next, but she knew she had to call. The next morning, Emma sat at her small kitchen table, the kind with one loose leg and coffee stains that never quite scrubbed out. The early sun painted soft gold across the counter, but inside her chest, the storm hadn't calmed. Across from her sat Marcus, her teenage brother, still in his pajama hoodie, crunching cereal while pretending not to watch her. The silence between them buzzed with tension. On the table sat the same business card, Dwayne Johnson's, alongside. A half-written resignation letter folded in half, and a cheap pen, whose cap she chewed when nervous. Emma's thumb hovered over the call button on her phone. Her hands were shaking, but not from cold. This wasn't just a phone call. This was a leap across a canyon built by years of fear, doubt, and survival. She glanced at Marcus again. He looked up at her with those quiet, protective eyes. He didn't say anything, but he didn't have to. His presence was her anchor and her reason. Emma inhaled deeply, eyes fluttering shut just long enough to whisper a prayer under her breath. Her thumb moved. She pressed, "Call." It rang. Once, then twice. Each second stretched like eternity. And then a voice picked up. Clear, professional. "Techbridge AI, how can I direct your call?" Emma swallowed the fear rising in her throat. "Hi. I was told to reach out to Mr. Johnson." Her voice cracked slightly but held steady. On the other end there was a pause. "One moment." Emma locked eyes with Marcus. He gave her a small nod, pride flickering through his awkward teenage expression. It was happening. She had stepped into the unknown. There was no going back, only forward. 2 weeks later, the transformation was almost surreal. Emma stood at the front of a sleek conference room at Techbridge, no longer wearing a uniform, but dressed in a modest, crisp blouse and dark trousers that matched her quiet confidence. Around her sat a small team of engineers, designers, and language specialists, many of whom had no idea that this poised woman leading the presentation had once cleaned hotel floors. The screen behind her displayed mock-ups of a new AI-powered interface designed for the hearing impaired, inspired directly by her experiences with Marcus. Her hands moved fluidly as she signed the explanation, pausing occasionally for interpretation. She didn't just speak, she translated her heart through motion. Dwayne Johnson sat at the end of the table, arms crossed, eyes locked on her, not with authority but with admiration. His usual composed demeanor softened, replaced by something that looked like pride. Emma walked over to the whiteboard, grabbed a marker, and outlined the key issues deaf users had with current apps. The team listened intently. Every suggestion came not from theory, but lived reality. One of the developers raised his hand. "Where did you learn all this?" he asked, half impressed, half curious. Emma smiled, just enough to suggest a story too long for that moment. "Life," she said. The room chuckled gently, but Dwayne didn't laugh. He was too busy watching the ripple of purpose move through his team, led by the woman they almost overlooked. As the meeting wrapped, Emma's face glowed. Not with ego, but purpose. This wasn't just a job. This was her voice, her brother's voice, and 100 others finally being heard. And it was only the beginning. Emma stood backstage, her palms slightly damp as the muffled applause from the conference hall filtered through the curtain. The large screen behind her displayed the Techbridge logo, alongside 2 images, one of a worn maid's uniform and another of her brother Marcus smiling while using the new AI interface. She took a breath, steadying her nerves not for fear, but because this moment was sacred. Walking into the light, she stood at the center of the stage, no longer hidden, no longer overlooked. The spotlight wrapped around her like a quiet crown. As the crowd settled, her navy business suit contrasted with the memory of that hotel uniform, but it wasn't just her clothes that had changed. It was her presence. She began with her hands, signing the opening words before the interpreters. Voice echoed through the speakers. 2 years ago, I served coffee in this very building. Today, we're serving something far more valuable: access, dignity, and voice. The room leaned in. CEOs, developers, educators, and investors, all focused not on her resume, but on her story. Emma continued, sharing how her brother's silence became her motivation, how dignity wasn't given. It was designed. And when she clicked the remote, the slide behind her shifted to a short video clip. Marcus navigating school with the Techbridge device, confidently raising his hand in class. The room erupted in applause, but Emma didn't bask in it. Instead, her eyes searched the crowd until they found him, Dwayne Johnson standing in the back, smiling with a kind of quiet victory, as if to say, "You did it." And she had. Not because someone chose her, but because she chose to speak, even if her voice came through her hands. Later that week, Emma returned to the hotel, not as a maid, but as an executive invited for a follow-up meeting with the hotel's accessibility board. The corridors looked familiar, the scent of polished wood and linen still lingering in the air. She walked with quiet confidence in her heels, her ID badge clipped neatly to her blazer. As she turned the corner, her pace slowed. There it was, a maid's cart tucked beside a room, a young girl refilling toiletries with focused hands and slightly hunched shoulders, the exact same posture Emma once carried. The maid looked up, startled, as if worried she had done something wrong, but Emma didn't scold her. She stopped, gently placed a hand on the cart, and smiled, soft, knowing, warm. The girl blinked, recognizing something familiar, something unspoken. In that fleeting moment, Emma reached into her purse and pulled out a folded note and quietly handed it over. The girl unfolded it to find a simple message. Your story isn't small. Keep going. No cameras, no audience. Just a hallway and two women, one remembering, one dreaming. Emma didn't stay long. She continued walking toward the elevator, her reflection catching in the polished metal doors. The past hadn't vanished, but now it stood behind her, nodding in approval as the present moved forward. And somewhere down that hallway, a seed had just been planted in the heart of a new story. Weeks later, a tech diversity conference was held inside the very hotel Emma once scrubbed in silence. The same chandelier-lit ballroom that echoed with clinking glasses now buzzed with the hum of innovation and purpose. Emma stepped onto the stage, not with a mop, but in a tailored navy suit, heels clicking with certainty, her presence commanding without a single word. Behind her, a large screen displayed a split image. On one side, a photo of her in her maid's uniform from years ago. On the other, her younger brother Marcus, wearing the TechBridge hearing aid prototype, laughing in real time through sign-supported voice interface. The audience froze for a moment, then rose to their feet in unison. Applause thundered through the hall, but Emma didn't flinch. Her hands moved with grace and precision, signing the story of how one overlooked maid changed the course of accessibility in tech. Her voice was silent, but the impact was thunderous. Dwayne Johnson sat in the front row, his eyes glassy, not just with pride but awe, because this wasn't about mentorship anymore. This was about legacy. Emma wasn't a footnote. She was the headline. And the world had finally stopped to listen. The hallway was quiet, carpeted in soft beige, the same as it had always been. Emma walked slowly, now in a crisp, dark blazer with a TechBridge pin on her lapel. Her strides were confident, but her eyes carried the weight of memories. She passed the familiar maid's cart parked near room 714, fresh towels stacked, cleaning supplies neatly arranged. A young maid, no older than Emma had been when she first started, knelt beside it, wiping down a bucket. She looked up suddenly, startled. For a second their eyes locked. The girl stood quickly, embarrassed, thinking she might be in trouble. But Emma offered a small smile, gentle, warm, knowing. She didn't say anything. She didn't need to. Her smile spoke volumes. I see you. I was you. And you matter. The young maid blinked, then smiled back, her shoulders relaxing. It was a moment without headlines or applause, just quiet redemption. Emma kept walking, but something had shifted. Her journey had come full circle, not in a boardroom or on a stage, but right there in that hallway, where she'd once been invisible. Now she was the reflection of what was possible. The TechBridge auditorium was alive with quiet energy as the audience settled into their seats. It wasn't a typical tech conference. There was something sacred about this moment, something that felt like a chapter closing and a new one cracking open. Emma stood backstage, her heart pounding not with fear, but with purpose. She straightened her navy blazer and looked down at the small photo pinned inside her pocket, a snapshot of her and Marcus grinning in the kitchen the day she resigned from the hotel. Then the lights dimmed. Her name was called. She stepped onto the stage, greeted by a soft spotlight and the subtle rustle of applause. Behind her, a massive screen displayed a split image. On one side, her maid uniform folded on a hotel cart, and on the other, Marcus wearing the latest TechBridge AI hearing aid, laughing in real-time conversation. She began to sign, her voice channeled through an interpreter, but her hands told the story. Every movement was deliberate, filled with conviction. She didn't talk about success. She talked about belief, the belief someone else had in her, and the belief she finally found in herself. She spoke to the quiet strugglers, the invisible dreamers, the ones still cleaning rooms and wondering if they mattered. The room listened, not just with ears, but with hearts. And when she finished, the applause didn't come immediately. There was a beat of stillness, deep, reverent silence, before the entire auditorium rose to its feet. Emma stood tall, not just as a voice for the unheard, but as proof that when someone believes in you, it can change everything, and when you believe in yourself, it changes the world. It was an ordinary afternoon at the hotel, sunlight pouring through the long corridor windows, casting golden patterns across the floor. Emma walked slowly, now dressed in a sleek black suit, her ID badge clipped near her collar. The same hallway she had once swept and scrubbed now echoed softly under her confident steps. As she turned the corner, her eyes caught a familiar sight, a maid's cart neatly stocked parked outside one of the rooms. A young girl, no older than Emma had been on her first day, knelt beside it, adjusting a stack of towels. Their eyes met. For a moment the hallway stilled. The girl blinked, almost unsure if she recognized the woman standing before her. Emma offered a gentle smile, quiet, warm, and full of something deeper than words. Legacy, hope, proof. The girl stood up, slowly brushing her hands on her apron, still processing. Emma didn't say anything. She didn't need to. She just nodded slightly, a silent acknowledgement of the road she had walked, and the one this girl was just beginning. As Emma continued down the hallway, her steps light but sure, the girl watched her go, eyes wide with something new burning. Behind them, not envy, not confusion, but possibility, because in that moment, in that single glance, the maid saw something that told her the story wasn't just Emma's, it could be hers too. That night, Emma stood at the window of her apartment, city lights flickering like stars fallen to earth. Her reflection stared back at her, older, wiser, stronger. On the table behind her was a framed photo, Marcus wearing the TechBridge prototype, smiling without fear. Beside it sat the old business card, edges worn, corners bent. Emma picked it up one more time. It no longer represented uncertainty. Now, it was a reminder of the moment she chose to bet on herself. She turned and walked into the kitchen, where Marcus was doing homework, earbuds in, music low. He looked up, met her eyes, and smiled. Not just the smile of a younger brother, but of someone who knew what it meant to watch someone rise. She joined him, sliding into the chair across from him. They didn't need words. The air between them was filled with understanding, the kind built on late nights, unpaid bills, and silent prayers. Marcus pointed at the AI interface he was testing on his tablet, a project he'd been building after school. Emma leaned in, watching intently, realizing he wasn't just a user anymore. He was a creator. He was the future they had fought for. She didn't say anything, but her eyes said it all. "I see you, and I'm not done yet." She got up and walked into her room, turned on her laptop, and opened a blank document, titled My Story, in her hands. The screen glowed softly in the darkness as she began to type the first line. "My name is Emma, and I was never voiceless. I was just waiting to be heard." Months later, the same grand hotel that once echoed with the sound of Emma's cleaning cart now hummed with anticipation for the Diversity in Tech Global Conference. The ballroom shimmered with light, its crystal chandeliers catching the brilliance of a new era. Backstage, Emma stood in a tailored navy suit, fingers slightly trembling. Not with fear, but with awe. Her name had just been introduced. Applause erupted as she stepped onto the stage. The spotlights warmed her face, but it was the faces in the crowd that lit her up. Young girls, engineers, janitors in the back and somewhere near the front. Dwayne Johnson, smiling like a father who'd always known she'd get here. Behind her, a massive screen displayed two images side by side. A photo of Emma in her maid uniform, sleeves rolled up, and another of Marcus, now a student ambassador, wearing the TechBridge device confidently in a classroom. The audience gasped, then rose in thunderous applause. Emma held up her hands, signing her first words before speaking them. "This is not just a device," she said, her voice steady. "It's a door I almost never opened." She paused. "I used to clean this very room. I thought my future would always be in the background, but someone saw me, and I chose to see myself." A tear slid down her cheek as she continued. "So if you're out there, feeling unheard, unseen, I promise you this: your voice matters, even if it speaks through your hands." As the crowd stood again, this time in silence and awe, Emma signed one final phrase before stepping back. "Keep listening. You never know who's about to rise." If you've ever felt invisible, unheard, or underestimated, this story was for you. Because today, Emma stands not just as a symbol of resilience, but as a reminder that your beginning doesn't define your becoming. And if one person's belief could change her life, maybe your belief is the spark someone else needs. If this touched your heart, don't keep it to yourself. Comment your favorite moment or quote. Share it with someone who needs a sign to keep going. Subscribe for more stories that don't just entertain, they awaken something real.